In episode 35, titled Cellular Links, When Constraints Make Cellular the Best Answer, we treat cellular as flexible connectivity when wired options lag, because the business sometimes needs connectivity now, not after a construction schedule catches up. The exam often includes cellular because it represents a different set of constraints than fiber or cable, and it tests whether you can choose a link type that fits timeline, resilience, and operational reality rather than insisting on the ideal circuit that is not available. Cellular shines when you need rapid deployment, when you need a backup path that is physically diverse from wired infrastructure, or when the site is remote and wired service is limited. The trade-off is variability, because radio conditions, carrier networks, and shared spectrum create performance swings that must be planned for. When you design cellular intentionally, you treat it as part of a resilient path strategy with strong security and clear monitoring, not as a casual hotspot. The goal of this episode is to make you comfortable choosing cellular when constraints demand it, and to recognize the traps that appear when cellular is treated as a drop-in replacement for stable wired transport. Before we continue, a quick note: this audio course is a companion to the CloudNetX books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Common use cases include temporary sites, backup paths, and remote access, because these situations value speed of deployment and physical diversity more than perfect latency. Temporary sites include construction trailers, pop-up retail, disaster recovery locations, and event operations, where the site may exist for weeks or months and wired installation timelines are mismatched to the business need. Backup paths are a major cellular use case because cellular provides an alternate medium, often with a separate physical failure domain from local fiber cuts or cable outages. Remote access use cases include telemetry, small field offices, and equipment sites where there may be no reasonable wired option, yet connectivity is required for operations and monitoring. Cellular is also used as an initial bring-up link while waiting for a primary circuit, allowing early deployment and testing without blocking the project schedule. In exam scenarios, cues like "new site opens tomorrow," "no wired service available," or "must keep systems online during construction" often point towards cellular as a practical answer. The key is that cellular is not chosen because it is perfect. It is chosen because it is available, deployable, and often diverse from the failure modes that break wired paths. The limitations matter because they define how you should use cellular, and the most common are variable latency, coverage gaps, and data caps. Variable latency is normal because cellular paths traverse radio links, carrier scheduling, and backhaul networks that change based on load and signal conditions, which affects real-time applications and can create jitter. Coverage gaps can appear due to geography, building structure, congestion, or carrier footprint, and those gaps can produce intermittent connectivity that is difficult to predict without monitoring. Data caps and usage policies can constrain throughput and cost, and an unexpected backup failover can generate large usage and unexpected billing if controls are not in place. Even when a plan is unlimited, throttling and priority policies can still impact performance when networks are congested. In exam reasoning, these limitations are why cellular is often recommended as a secondary path for resilience rather than as a primary transport for latency-sensitive workloads. The best answers acknowledge that cellular is useful but variable, and that designs must incorporate that variability. Recognizing these constraints prevents you from choosing cellular for workloads that require stable latency without any mitigation strategy. A strong default is to use cellular as a secondary link for resilience when possible, because it delivers the most value when paired with a primary wired link and used during outages or degradation. As a secondary link, cellular provides physical diversity because it does not depend on the same trench, conduit, or local cable plant as the primary, which reduces the chance that one incident takes out both paths. It also provides rapid recovery because failover can occur quickly when the primary path fails, keeping critical operations online. The design goal is not to make cellular equal to fiber. It is to keep the site functional when the primary is down, even if performance is reduced. In exam scenarios, when the prompt mentions continuity, keep point of sale running, or maintain connectivity during outages, cellular as backup is often the best fit because it satisfies availability without requiring months of circuit provisioning. The key is to treat it as part of a dual-path strategy with clear thresholds for when traffic should move to cellular and when it should return. Secondary does not mean unimportant. It means purpose-built for resilience. Security considerations are essential because cellular networks are still untrusted transport, and the common safe pattern is to use secure overlays and strong identity controls. Cellular traffic traverses carrier infrastructure and often the public internet, so you should assume it is exposed to observation and interference and should protect it accordingly. Virtual private network overlays provide confidentiality and integrity for traffic between the site and trusted destinations, and they can make the cellular link behave like a controlled extension of the enterprise network. Strong identity controls matter because a site on cellular should not be allowed to bypass authentication simply because it is remote, and access decisions should be consistent with the organization's trust model. Security also includes limiting what services are reachable over the cellular path and ensuring that failover does not accidentally expose internal networks through a misconfigured gateway. In exam scenarios, when cellular is presented as an option, the best answer usually pairs it with secure overlays and clear access control rather than treating cellular as secure by default. The point is that cellular solves reachability, not trust, and you must add trust through encryption and identity. A secure design makes cellular a transport choice, not a security shortcut. Signal strength and antenna placement influence reliability, and even without physical installation details, the architectural lesson is that link quality affects performance and stability. Better signal conditions generally reduce retransmissions, reduce variability, and increase effective throughput, while poor signal conditions increase loss and jitter, making the link feel unstable. This is why a cellular link can appear excellent in one location and unusable in another, even with the same carrier plan and device class. The exam does not require you to describe mounting hardware, but it does expect you to recognize that cellular performance is environment dependent and that monitoring and planning must account for that dependency. In practical terms, this means you should treat cellular as a link whose quality can change, and you should plan for graceful degradation rather than assuming a fixed service level. It also means redundancy across carriers can be valuable when coverage is uncertain, because different carriers can have different performance profiles in the same area. In exam scenarios, if a site is described as rural, remote, or inside a challenging building, cellular reliability considerations should influence whether it is primary, secondary, or multi-carrier. The key is that cellular is a radio network first, and radio quality determines the user experience. Consider a scenario where a retail location must keep point of sale online during a fiber outage, because this is one of the clearest cases where cellular becomes the best answer. Point of sale systems often need reliable transaction connectivity, and an outage can immediately affect revenue and customer experience. If the primary fiber path is cut, the site still needs a path to payment services and inventory systems, even if bandwidth is lower. A cellular backup link can provide that continuity quickly, especially when it is configured as a failover path that activates when the primary is down or degraded beyond a threshold. The design must ensure that the essential point-of-sale flows are prioritized and that non-essential traffic is limited during failover, so the cellular link is not saturated by background updates. Security overlays ensure transactions remain protected and that the backup path does not introduce a weaker trust boundary. In exam reasoning, this scenario strongly favors cellular as a backup because it meets the business outcome of continuity during fiber failure with a diverse path. The best answer usually acknowledges both the resilience value and the need for controlled usage. A pitfall is relying on cellular as primary connectivity without monitoring and limits, because variability and data policies can turn a seemingly functional design into an outage or a cost crisis. Without monitoring, you may not notice degrading signal quality or carrier congestion until users complain, and by then troubleshooting is harder because performance swings can be transient. Without limits, background traffic can consume the link, causing critical applications to time out and generating unexpected data charges, especially during long outages when failover stays active. Primary cellular can work in some scenarios, but it requires disciplined monitoring, clear performance expectations, and often redundancy, such as multiple carriers, to reduce coverage risk. In exam scenarios, when the prompt emphasizes critical operations and no wired options, choosing cellular as primary may be acceptable only if the answer also includes strong monitoring, thresholds, and an overlay security model. The best answer will not treat primary cellular as a casual decision. It will present it as a constrained choice with compensating controls. The key is that cellular can be primary, but only when the architecture acknowledges its variability and manages it deliberately. Carrier network address translation complicates inbound access and troubleshooting, and this is a common reason cellular is better suited for outbound initiated connections and for overlay-based access models. Many cellular deployments sit behind carrier translation, meaning the site does not have a stable public address reachable from the internet in a straightforward way. This makes inbound access for remote management or for hosting services difficult, and it can break assumptions about direct inbound reachability. It also complicates troubleshooting because external logs may show shared carrier addresses, requiring additional correlation to attribute activity to a specific site. The practical implication is that cellular designs often rely on outbound initiated tunnels to a known endpoint, which creates a predictable control point and avoids relying on inbound reachability through the carrier. In exam scenarios, if the requirement includes inbound hosting or direct external access, cellular may be a poor fit unless a specific workaround is included. The best answer usually treats cellular as a transport that benefits from overlay tunnels rather than as a direct public hosting path. Recognizing carrier translation constraints helps you avoid solutions that are infeasible in real cellular deployments. There are quick wins that make cellular safer and more predictable, such as setting usage alerts and failover thresholds so the link is used intentionally rather than accidentally. Usage alerts provide early warning when a backup link is consuming more data than expected, which can indicate a prolonged outage or a misrouted traffic pattern. Failover thresholds help ensure the site does not flap between links unnecessarily, and that failover occurs when performance is truly unacceptable, not at the first sign of minor jitter. Thresholds can also enforce prioritization, ensuring that critical traffic continues while non-essential traffic is throttled or deferred during backup operation. These measures reduce both operational surprise and cost surprise, which is important because cellular is often chosen under time pressure and then left in place longer than intended. In exam reasoning, answers that include monitoring and threshold control tend to align with best practice because they acknowledge cellular's variability and cost profile. The key is that cellular resilience is only valuable if it is predictable and governed during the moments it is most needed. Quick wins are about making the backup path behave like a designed component, not a last-minute patch. Operational guidance matters because cellular links fail in different ways than wired links, and teams need documented carriers, subscriber identity module profiles, and escalation steps so response is fast. Documentation should include which carrier is used, what plan and constraints exist, what identifiers are relevant, and what the expected behavior is during failover and recovery. Subscriber identity module profiles and device configuration details should be tracked so replacements and troubleshooting can be done without rediscovering basics during an incident. Escalation steps matter because carrier outages, coverage issues, and throttling policies often require coordination with the provider, and time is wasted when ownership and contacts are unclear. This is especially important when cellular is a backup for many sites, because failures can occur simultaneously and response must be organized. In exam scenarios, when operations constraints are mentioned, answers that include documentation and clear runbooks often align with best answer logic because they reduce time to repair. The technical design is only as good as the operational ability to keep it working during outages. Cellular benefits from discipline because its variability demands faster, clearer response. A memory anchor that captures the role of cellular is flexible, variable, capped, secure with overlay because it summarizes what it is and how to use it safely. Flexible reminds you it is fast to deploy and useful when wired options are delayed or unavailable. Variable reminds you performance can swing, so you should not assume consistent latency without monitoring and redundancy. Capped reminds you that usage limits and policy constraints can create cost and throttling risk, which must be managed with alerts and prioritization. Secure with overlay reminds you that cellular is untrusted transport and should be paired with encryption and strong identity controls to maintain enterprise security posture. This anchor helps you choose cellular appropriately in exam scenarios because it forces you to mention the right compensating controls when cellular is selected. It also prevents you from assuming cellular is a full replacement for engineered private transport because variability and translation constraints remain. When you can recite this anchor, you can justify cellular as a best answer when constraints make it necessary and safe. To end the core, decide whether cellular should be primary or backup for a given requirement and explain why, because the exam often tests this judgment implicitly. If wired service exists or is feasible, cellular is usually best as a backup, providing diversity and rapid failover while keeping primary traffic on a more stable link. If wired service is not available within the business timeline, cellular may become primary by necessity, but that choice should be paired with strong monitoring, usage controls, and ideally multi-carrier resilience to reduce coverage risk. If the site hosts inbound services or requires stable, low-latency performance for real-time applications, cellular as primary may be risky unless the scenario provides compensating constraints and acceptance of variability. If the requirement is simply keep critical transactions online, cellular can be excellent as backup because it supports continuity even when performance is degraded. The best exam answer aligns cellular's role with the site's tolerance for variability and the feasibility of alternatives, rather than treating cellular as a universal solution. When you can defend the role in one clean sentence, you are making the kind of constraint-based decision the exam rewards. In the conclusion of episode 35, titled Cellular Links, When Constraints Make Cellular the Best Answer, cellular is best when speed of deployment, physical diversity, and continuity matter more than perfectly consistent latency. It is commonly used for temporary sites, remote locations, and backup paths, and it succeeds when its limitations, including variable latency, coverage gaps, and data caps, are managed deliberately. The safest default is to use cellular as a secondary link for resilience, protected by secure overlays and strong identity controls, with monitoring and thresholds that keep usage predictable. You avoid pitfalls like treating cellular as primary without monitoring and limits, and ignoring carrier network address translation that complicates inbound access and troubleshooting. You gain quick wins by setting usage alerts and failover thresholds, and you document carriers, subscriber identity module profiles, and escalation steps so operations are ready when the primary path fails. Assign yourself one backup design narration by taking a critical site and stating what traffic must work during an outage, how cellular failover is triggered, how usage is controlled, and how security is preserved through an overlay, because that narrative is how you turn cellular from a last resort patch into a reliable resilience component. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.